Good evening all book lovers. One thing all of us share here in common is our love of books. And the bond we form over the love of books is what is going to sustain us throughout this evening. KVPattom, as we are talking about, born in 1964, has come a long way since 1964 and has made every effort to make school life meaningful and joyful to all its young learners. And KVPattom Library has played a major role in shaping up the mind, the intellect, as well as the horizon of its young students. Books, as you know, is very important for the mind, the heart, and the soul. And books are the plane, the train, and the road. They are the destination and the journey. They are home. So we are home right here among the book in the library. On that note, let me invite our principal, Sri Ajay sir, to accord a formal welcome to our guest, Srimati Bindu Amat. Sri Bindu Amat is the Associate Professor of English, Providence Women's College, Calicut, a book lover, a good speaker, coordinator of many literary activities. She is kind enough to accept our invitation and to be present here with us. May I invite the principal to give a formal welcome to our guest. So please.
Most honorable guest of today, Madam Bindu Amat. My dear staff members and students, it's a matter of pleasure for me to welcome Madam Bindu Amat for this program. Actually, because of this pandemic, we are all at home and the children started reading it. These reading habits become a part of our life because of this pandemic. It's a side effect of the pandemic, we can say. There are so many problems we faced. Children, we are not able to interact with children, we are not able to take classes, we are not able to, offline classes are not there, children are sitting at home. We are only connecting through them through mobile phone or something only we are connected. That's online connection only was there, but the situation was like that, children started reading. That is the most important thing. And in that respect, actually, this discussion is very meaningful and useful also. We have with us a prominent reader, a writer, and a trainer, and after all, a person who likes to talk to children, and a person who likes to motivate and inspire them towards these books and reading also. In that respect, I welcome Madam Bindu Amat for the KVPattom family for a discussion. Our children are there, our staff members are there. Madam, this is actually a school which is known for its excellence in all fields, especially the library, their school library and Mr. Librarian, Mr. Faisal and Madam Vidya. They contributed a lot in elevating the status of the school. So they have started so many innovative practices and that help children also start reading and it motivates them to read. The latest addition in that respect is mobile phone. Children all are carrying mobile phone nowadays. It's because of this online classes. Every child is having one mobile phone. Earlier we were asking not to keep, but now there is no other option. Now they started carrying, and when they are carrying a mobile phone, definitely one way or other way we can request them to utilize it. In that respect, actually, Mr. Faisal Librarian started a mobile library also. Now children can even read book through their mobile also. So in that respect, this library is contributing a lot. So on this occasion, I once again welcome Madam, and I appreciate Mr. Faisal and Madam Vidya also, librarians, for starting this program. It's a reading month, National Reading Month program. So once again, I welcome Madam, and I request Madam to start the today's discussions and the deliberations. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. May I invite Bindu ma'am to start there?
Thank you, ma'am, and thank you, sir. Thank you, everyone, for this precious opportunity to be connected to one of the most important, one of the best rated schools in the country, KVPattom. I think the best. That is the position, I think, that the school now has in the national list. It is therefore a matter of great privilege to be associated with this program, organized so meaningfully by the school. I must congratulate the principal, the staff, and the students, and a particular word of appreciation to the forces behind the library, Mr. Faisal and Ms. Vidya. Hats off to you. I did take a walk down the link that you sent me, and saw the wonderful work that you have been doing to keep the students connected with their books, even in these most horrific of times. So on that very happy note of being associated with KVPattom, let me start this the session, for which I have made a presentation, a special presentation for you. Just give me a moment to screen it for you. I will begin with a little question to our young students here. KVPattom has a legacy of excellence in every field, and therefore I have decided to begin with a little question, a little quiz for you. Okay? What I have put up there on the screen is the title of a work. It looks pretty long. Indeed it is. This was the complete title of a particular work that came out many centuries back in 1516. So the 16th century work is known to us by one word. That word is what you can fill in that blank with. You'll notice that the screen has many words in the Latin language. I have chosen this as a kind of nod to the new Euro champions, the team of Italy. So it is to Italy and their classical language, Latin, that we go. If you can guess the name of that work, it is a single word that we are familiar with. This is the complete title. What is that blank?
Madam, this can you repeat your question?
Pardon?
Madam, sorry, madam, again, just can you repeat your question?
Is Siddesh answering? I can't hear you too well, Siddesh. It's not very clear. If anybody can...
Ma'am, he asked to repeat the question.
Okay, just fill in the blank there, okay? When you fill in the blank, you will be filling it with one word. That word is the title that we are more familiar with. This is the complete title. We are familiar with the short title, a one-word title, which is what fills that blank there. Libellus vere aureus nec minus salutaris quam festivus de optimo rei publicae statue dec nova insula dash. One word.
Ma'am,
Yeah.
madam, this work of literature belongs to which country?
It is an Italian work. It's written in Latin. It was written by an Englishman, but as was common in those times, it was written in the classical language of Latin, because English was a vernacular language. It was written in Latin. This is Latin.
Madam, the poet is an Englishman only, but the language is also Latin. Language is Latin.
Yes, exactly. English writer.
It doesn't have anything to do with Italy, no, madam.
Italy. It was written in Latin. The work was originally written in Latin. The classical
Madam, John Milton. Madam, is it John Milton?
No, not Milton. This is 16th century, 1516. This work. We're all familiar with this work. We always...
Copernicus?
No, a writer. This person is well known to us as a writer. And
Ma'am, can I answer?
yes.
Then not Dante.
Ma'am, is that single word is utopia?
Exactly, Navneet, exactly. Congratulations to you. That is the right word. It is indeed utopia. That's why I said we are familiar with that word, utopia. This is the full title of the word utopia, which today we understand as the ideal land. Okay? So,
Madam, the land where everything is ideal.
Exactly.
Elysium.
Yeah.
Madam, is it not Elysium?
Elysium is a perfect land, no? That is there. Utopia, yeah. Elysium is a kind of happy land. Utopia is a kind of ideal world.
Oh,
Not ideal, where everything is ideal and perfect. And which is why
And John Milton also used to, though he was an Englishman, he also used to write in Latin also.
yeah, many of the writers, Milton actually wrote in English, but many of the writers, early 15th century, 16th century, and so on, they would be writing in Latin because that was the accepted language. Then English was a vernacular language. It was not considered as elite enough. It was a common man's language. Latin, they would choose either Greek or Latin, but mostly Latin. In any case, it is Sir Thomas More's 1516 work, Utopia, which, when the full title is translated into English, it goes like this: a little true book, not less beneficial than enjoyable, about how things should be in a state and about the new island, Utopia. And that is why I had chosen to...
Madam, can you just once more repeat the translation of that English translation?
Just 1 second, Siddesh.
Yes.
You may listen to her presentation and then you can ask questions later, towards the end, okay? All of you. Please, if you have any questions, you can put it in the chat, it will be answered.
And
please don't
Madam,
disturb the presentation, that's it.
That's okay, ma'am. Ma'am, the presentation will be available to them.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that you can go back to it anytime you want, Siddesh, okay? It will be available in your YouTube channel. Okay. Yeah, so which is why saluting Sir Thomas More's concept of the perfect land, I have chosen to entitle my presentation for you, dear students of KVPattom, as From Nusquama to Utopia. Nusquama was actually the original short title that he had thought of, which means a new no land. It's a word that conveys the idea of no land. But then he decided that it had to be a better word. And that is why he, the Englishman, decided to use utopia, where you comes from the Greek word, which means good, and therefore a good land. So it is to that vision of a good, perfect land that I invite you, okay? And as I begin my presentation, I would like to go back down memory lane, some 40 years back, to the early 1980s, when I think most of you who are assembled here in this meet would definitely not have been born. In those early 1980s, this was the image of your school that I saw. It is all in hazy memory land now, but one thing that stands out clearly is the reason why we from KV Calicut reached Kendriya Vidyalaya Pattom, and that was as part of the volleyball team. We were students who represented Kendriya Vidyalaya Calicut, and we came to Kendriya Vidyalaya Pattom because that was the venue of the regional sports meet, and we played the game of volleyball. That brings back very colorful memories to me. We stayed in your school. I think the school has probably changed a great deal, but it is very vivid, brilliant, colorful memories that I still cherish of your school. And therefore, in many ways, it is a kind of homecoming, or going back home, or going back to a place that was, at least for a brief point of time, a kind of home for us. Well, much as these memories of the volleyball matches that we played there and the stay in that school are colorful to me, there is one thought that, often troubled me during those days. Whenever, I was on court, or whenever I was playing this game of volleyball. And that was this fear of, the ball going under the net. When you serve or during the play, if the ball doesn't make it over the net, but instead goes under the net, you know that it is a disqualification and the point is handed over to the next team, to the other team, to the opponents, and they also get the chance to serve next. So this, was a kind of metaphor for various kinds of anxieties, apprehensions, which we all go through at various points of time. And it took many years, many years, and more importantly, many years of reading, many books, many volumes, for me to come to terms with this fear and look at it differently. It happened when I came to know about this dance, the Limbo Dance. It is a West Indian dance where I'm sure all of you are familiar with it. You must have seen it on TV, where you have this bar that is kept and where the dancer has to maneuver his or her way beneath this bar, which is gradually lowered until you have a tiny slit of space remaining. And the efficiency of the dancer is measured in the way that he or she can pass under it, spread eagle like a spider. Now, this limbo dance is one which takes an entirely different look at the net or the bar. Passing beneath the bar is an act of resurgence. This was the lesson that I got when I came to encounter the works of many writers, especially from the Caribbean islands. And I would particularly like to mention the writer Kamau Brathwaite, a 20th century writer who contributed many works of especially poetry. He's one of the best known writers from the island of Barbados, which is one of the islands of the West Indies. And I would particularly like to mention his New World trilogy, The Arrivals, Rites of Passage, Islands, and Masks. And in the work Masks, you have a poem called Caliban. I'm sure many of you might be familiar with the name of Caliban. Caliban is one of the characters in a play written by the English playwright William Shakespeare. It is the last play that William Shakespeare wrote, and you have the magician, the central character, Prospero, who many people consider to be a kind of alter ego or a kind of dramatic representation of Shakespeare himself. In any case, in the play, you have Prospero taking ownership of an island that originally belonged to a witch named Sycorax and her son, Caliban. Now, this was part of the KV syllabus, the CBSE syllabus when we studied. Probably it is still there in the syllabus, Ferdinand and Miranda and Prospero and Ariel. But I'm more interested in the character of Caliban, who was actually the rightful owner of the island, but who was thrown off his ownership by Prospero. And much as I, like everyone else, considered Prospero to be a great man, much as I hated Caliban at that point of time, because we were taught to look at Caliban as a villain, who was up to no good at all. It was much later, the books that we read, the books that we studied, the poems that we were sometimes prescribed, made us look at the whole equation from another perspective altogether. And we realized that Caliban was actually not a villain, not so much a villain. In fact, there's nothing wrong in considering Prospero as the villain, because he actually dethroned the rightful ruler, Caliban. And in one of the well-known poems of Brathwaite, we have this image of Caliban. Caliban there is like a limbo dancer. He goes under the stick that Prospero often uses to suppress him, to control him, to keep him under his rule. And here is Caliban, who dances and wriggles under the stick to a new land of freedom. That was a new image, a new understanding of an old story. And this kind of entry into a new world of freedom is what I would like to share you with today with regard to books and reading. I have no hesitation in pointing out that in exactly the same way that those books, including the poems of Braithwaite and the works of writers like Wilson Harris that I have put up here, who's written works like the Carnival Trilogy, the Guyana Quartet, and so on, in each one of which you have the rituals, the customs of these Caribbean islanders celebrating their freedom. They go through the stick of colonization, they wriggle underneath it to a new world of freedom. And they use language to do that. So this is in many ways a metaphorical way of representing the way that language, books, reading, and writing can enable you to move to new lands of freedom. As Wilson Harris says, the dancer goes under the limbo in an almost impossible bodily position, emulating the subjection of the slave body. It is actually, the limbo dance is actually a recreation of the slavery, the years of slavery that all these people were subjected to. When they were transported from Africa and from Asia to work in the plantations of America, of the the rich cotton and sugarcane plantations, they were made to, they were actually packed together in the ships, and it was with much effort that they wriggled out for a breath of air. And they keep, going back to this ritual, enabling them to reinterpret their years of slavery in a new way altogether. So it is a constant reminder. The more they dance, the more they are reminding themselves that they have now mastered their life in such a way that they can make their slave body rise, move into a future where you have renewal and hope. This is the same idea that has been conveyed by so many writers. I would particularly like to quote one writer, a very significant writer, Bill Ashcroft, who's a writer whose works we read a great deal to understand texts that have been written in the past. So it is when we read the works of Bill Ashcroft that we realize how we need to look at the old texts, whether it is Shakespeare's Tempest or whether it is Charlotte Bronte's Jane Eyre. We can look at each one of these texts with new eyes. As Bill Ashcroft says, this kind of reading and writing and playing with language is something that leads you to a new utopia. He calls it the utopian possibility of art and literature. It can transform power and imagine a new future. Any kind of suffering that you are under can be transformed into something new, something meaningful, some bright new kind of future. He says that literature, has the capacity to imagine a different world. It is through these works of, literature that you can imagine a new world. It has therefore a kind of utopian function that can conceive of, imagine a world there where there is no power structure, where somebody is a Prospero and the other person is a Caliban, where somebody is a ruler and the other person is an outsider. That conflict is something that literature or the great world of books can erase. art and literature, he says, may not be able to win wars, but they can definitely imagine a future and give you suggestions, give you ideas, give you hope for in your future. And that kind of creativity is very important because it is through this creativity that oppressed people, like those slaves who do the limbo dance, are inspired. They hope for change, hope for freedom, and hope for the future through their creativity. This is the same Bill Ashcroft who says that literature or literary works, great works of literature, have it in them to engage with power and to imagine change. Change is, first of all, imagined through literary works. The pen, we often say, is mightier than the sword. It is another way of saying that Bill Ashcroft has adopted when he says literature can imagine change. It speaks of a different world and it can summon forth the hope for a better world. And he is realistic enough to say that all that we imagine may not be achievable, but what is never imagined can never be achieved. And therefore, it is very important for us to read, to imagine new futures and new hopes for better tomorrows. And that, that being the reason, the raison d'etre, to imagine a different world. That is the reason for literature, according to Bill Ashcroft. I would like to introduce you to, or maybe many of you are already familiar with this writer, Ursula Le Guin, who is often considered to be the writer whose works of science fiction and whose works of fantasy were probably the kind of prototype that writers like J.K. Rowling borrowed from. Earthsea is a land that she has created, very much like the Hogwarts Island, that Hogwarts School of Wizardry that we are all familiar with. Ursula K. Le Guin has imagined through her works of science fiction such worlds, where you have a kind of utopia. I would especially like to talk about an important essay written by her. It is the title given to this book also because it's a collection of essays, but this is the most important essay in it, The Carrier Bag Theory of Fiction. What this very highly imaginative writer, Ursula K. Le Guin, does in this is, she tries to reimagine the story of evolution itself. Our books of science have taught us a very stable story of evolution. We are familiar with the Big Bang Theory and the creation of the unicellular organisms, or the birth of the unicellular organisms, and then the biochemical reactions that further led to the multicellular organisms and the creation of man and so on. That story of evolution where we always mark progress with the tools that human beings made. How do we mark the eras of history? We call them the Paleolithic Age, the Neolithic Age, Paleolithic Age, the Neolithic Age, and so on. It is always the lithos, the stone, the weapon that is made with stone, the New Age, the Old Age. It is always the weapon, man as a hunter who made this earth what it is. That is the kind of evolution, story of evolution that we are familiar with. Now, Ursula Le Guin, what she does is she rewrites that story. She says, why should we give so much of importance to the weapon? Why don't we realize that even before the weapon was created by human beings, they would have created something else. What was that? A bag, a container, something in which they could gather things from the world outside. So before they began killing the animals, she says, they would have started gathering things from the world of nature. It is that which gave human beings the energy to live and to progress. So it is a new story of evolution that Ursula Le Guin introduces us to her. She says, prior to the preeminence of sticks, swords, and other tools, the greatest invention of our ancestors was the container. And that container, in this image, you can find all the normally accepted stories of evolution pushed to the margins, and the women here who are collecting the herbs, the fruits, the flowers, and the plants that heal. That, she says, is the beginning of civilization. So she rewrites this story of evolution. It is always a linear story. We began from the ape, and then we began to, stand erect, Homo erectus, and then we got the weapons. At every stage, we idolize the weapons. It's the weapon. Even in the last stage, you can find that weapon, which in today's world has become something like this. The man who wields the gun is the leader. I've just put up the image of the very powerful, very impressive James Bond. You can think of other He-Man kind of characters, all of whom are lionized by us because we have this tendency to think of evolution as a linear story. Adingane progress cheyunna story where the one who holds the weapon is always the victor. Now, Ursula Le Guin says, it is high time we gave up that killer story and let us focus instead on a life story. Understand evolution not as a saga or a story of killing, but as a story of life, bringing new life. Let us shift the way we look at humanity's foundations from one of domination, where you kill and dominate. Rather than that, let us look at it as one where we hold, and when you hold, you also share. Ursula Le Guin actually tells this different story of evolution in order to point out something about storytelling itself. And she says it is very important to write and read stories which are not merely killer stories, where there is always one person or one institution that is the victor. On the other hand, why don't we have a life-affirming story where everyone is an equal partner, where there is no high and low, where there is no hierarchy, and where there is a shared future. We need to abandon the old story, says Ursula Le Guin. I think that message of reading such stories and writing such stories is what I would like to leave you with. But to do that, I think I will seek the help of another important writer. In fact, Ursula Le Guin's book was introduced by this eminent writer, Donna Haraway. Now, she's a scientist, actually, she's a zoologist, but her books have, conveyed much more than zoology. This is just one of her books. Another important work of hers is the Cyborg Manifesto. I will not go into that, but I will talk about Staying with the Trouble, which has as its subtitle, Making Kin in the Tulusi, where very much like Ursula Le Guin, she wants to think of a world which is not anthropocentric. What is anthropocentric? Placing man at the center. She says that kind of thinking, giving so much of importance to the man who kills, is what has led to all the destruction that we face in the world today. All the problems, whether it is the wars, whether it is the famines, all of these come because of man's belief that he has the right to conquer the other. It may be another country, it may be another person, it may be the world of nature. So that kind of one-sided thinking is what we have to change, said Ursula Le Guin. Donna Haraway also says we have to change that anthropocentric view, because that is what has led to that humanistic thinking, placing man at the center, thinking that everything in the world exists for our benefit. That kind of humanistic, man-centered thinking, capitalist thinking is what has led to all the destruction. And she gives us the image of, look at the image there. It is a beautiful coming together of various beings. You have the man, you have the butterfly, you have different parts from different organisms, and also non-living things coming together. She talks about the possibility of a new era. The present era, what is the era that we live in called? It is the Anthropocene age. Anthropo, man at the center. And you can just look at the kind of destruction that has, been unleashed on the earth by man and his Anthropocene outlook. Brought a lot of political tension into the world, ecological disaster, and she says this kind of hyper-individualism, giving so much of importance to yourself, is something that you need to change. And we need to look at the natural world through a transforming vision. And she says it is our responsibility not to fight nature, but to form links, but to form networks with nature, so that we and nature exist on the same plane as in the carrier bag. She calls that new age, Donna Haraway calls that new age the Thulucene. From the Anthropocene, you reach the Thulucene. What does that mean? Thulucene is the age of the beings that live under the earth. Thulu means living beneath the earth. What do you have there? You have the bugs, you have the worms, you have the termites, you have all those tentacled creatures. They may be the invertebrates. We think that they are not so important. We, as the very steady vertebrates, we think that, we have a spine and that we can rule the world. But she says we have much to learn from those invertebrates. And in that Thulucene age, she says, it is a time when the humans will naturally live in balance, in harmony with nature. And we will cease to look at our species as the most important and learn to live. There is no way but, that, she says, we'll have to learn to live in a networked world. And we can see entire species as ecosystems. Even the Homo sapien, even we, she looks at the Homo sapien differently, and she says, even our body is actually something that is made up of so many organisms, bacteria, virus, and so many other things, microbes that help us become what we are. And therefore, this is an image that she uses to describe the new age, the Thulucene age, where you have this kind of no hierarchies, but a network. And everyone is responsible towards each other. That is the world that she calls one that can be created by symbiosis. What is symbiosis? Making together. We are familiar with symbiosis. She says symbiosis is when we do things in a mutually beneficial manner. Look at it slightly differently and call it symbiosis, mutually making. Let us together make a new world. And for that, she gives us some brilliant examples. She says, like Ursula Le Guin, she uses the word SF from the string figures, which can be handled to create different kinds of shapes. She says, it is exactly in that way that science fiction also works. That is, the combination of science, of all our knowledge, and our imagination. We cannot afford to let our knowledge and our imagination separate. Let us bring them together and create a world of science and fiction. In other words, speculative fabulation. Let us create new stories for a new world. Let us write, let us read and create new stories for a new world. And as examples for that, she gives us some very, very colorful not ideas actually, practices taking place in different parts of the world. What you see here is a beautiful project that is initiated by the Institute for Figuring. What it involves is people coming together and creating crochet products. What are these products? They are supposed to be models of the great coral reefs of the world. We are all aware of the fact that the coral reefs, like the mangroves, are great ecosystems, but they are also extremely in a very vulnerable position. Why? Because of man's deeds, because of the way that we pollute our land and, more importantly, our seas, our waters and our seas. These coral reefs, which preserve life on Earth, are in great danger of extinction. And as a way of conveying the idea of renewing life, bringing these coral reefs back to life, you have these people getting engaged in these coral reef crochet projects. How does that help? If people sit and do crochet, how does that help the coral reef? It helps the coral reef because these crochet works are all made up of the waste from the seas, the plastic, and every other kind of waste that fills our seas are taken out, and they create these installations, which they put up as exhibits in different parts of the world. It is a coming together of different branches of knowledge. You have mathematics, you have biology, you have knitting, you have crocheting, all these coming together to create different kinds of landscapes. A wonderful creative initiative to protect the earth. In exactly the same way, this image, this is a story that I like to keep telling always. I narrated this to the students of Kendriya Vidyalaya Calicut too, about the stories written by Dr. Alison Jolly. Alison Jolly was a scientist. She was a specialist in primates. And much of her work, research work, took her to the island of Madagascar, which today is known as the 8th continent. Why? Because it is so rich in its flora and fauna. In various ways, this person, Dr. Alison Jolly, has a very important role, has played a very important role in creating this 8th continent out of Madagascar. How? When she worked there as a scientist, she realized that, the children that she met, the Malagasy children that she met there, were hardly concerned about their animals. The endemic species like the lemur. She specialized in the study of lemurs. The lemur, the indri, the aye, the sifaka, different kinds of primates, different kinds of species, flora and fauna, which were endemic to Madagascar, were on the brink of extinction. And she realized that she could do something to change that. What did she do? She began writing books. Why? Because she realized that the children of that place did not know about their own animals. They did not have books that had stories about their own animals. They read only the books. The libraries in their schools only gave them books about the French or the English animals, with whom they had absolutely no connect. She decided to change that and wrote these stories, the Akko Project, with all these animals, and thereby brought the children of Madagascar closer to their own ecology, to their own environment, to their own flora and fauna. No wonder that country remains one of the last green spots of the world. I'll just stop with one more example that is given by Donna Haraway. This is the Never Alone project. It's a computer game project where you have this computer game that is developed with the stories popular among the native Alaskan native people known as the Inupiat. It's a tribe, and these native stories, conveyed much about environmental protection. And to convey that to the children, to the new students, they decided to bring together computer games and the native folklore, the stories narrated by the Inupiat tribespeople. And that is how they learn to protect themselves and their environment. Just 3 instances of the way in which you can, with creativity, bring a new kind of world into existence. In a world where there's so much of destruction happening outside, we, says Donna Haraway, says Ursula Le Guin, says Bill Ashcroft, says all those writers whom I mentioned, we need to read and write new stories. We need to write the kind of stories. I'm sure you've heard a lot about reading this entire reading month. Let me now focus on writing new stories. But to write new stories, you have to read the old stories. It is when you read the old stories that you can be inspired to rewrite them anew. We need the kind of stories that are unheroic, where you do not give prominence only to one person or one kind of establishment or one kind of institution. That kind of monologism, single-sidedness has to give way to a lot of new networked connections where you have a lot of imagination and even non-human actors. Let us not continue to live in this anthropocentric world which is only wreaking destruction in the world. Let us create the world anew. Let us look at nature not simply as a category, which is to be labeled. This tree, it has a label. You study that. You can consider it as a specimen. On the other hand, you realize that you and that tree and the animals and the birds, all of you belong to the same ecosystem. And that everyone, not a hero, not a single person, but everyone should work together as you have these women of the Chipko movement, celebrated in that Google Doodle. Let us dismantle the hierarchies and create networks. Let us stop measuring the world with one single yardstick, because that will only create inequality in the world. Let us write, she says, new stories, or I would exhort you to read the old stories and write new stories, stories that are inclusive, where you do not exclude somebody on the basis of his or her color or gender or race or religion or even the genus. Everyone, every living thing is precious. And we need to write stories that remind us of this network that we are all part of. I think that message of reading and writing new stories of inclusion that avoid exclusion is the best message that can be given on this day, the 12th of July, which is also a day when we remember a new heroine for our times, not a hero. She was shot down by people who had one single aim. What was that? Their own ideology. They did not believe that this world is also one that has space in it for people like Malala Yousafzai. As she rightly asks, if one man can destroy everything, why can't one girl change it? That one girl there is symbolic of all the change that we can bring about in the world to change the existing system and imagine a new utopia. Read the old stories and write new stories of inclusion. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Read old stories and write new stories is the message that has come over the talk. All different perspectives, I should say, started with Prospero, Caliban, and different roles for Prospero and Caliban. Then you came across new writers for our children, certainly.
Ursula Le Guin is a writer that they should definitely read, you know, the kind of new world
So,
that she's
I
creating.
know.
Yeah.
You have different authors and you have introduced new thought. They certainly have got a lot to think about, lot to research, I should say. Tonight, I think Google will be really busy because most of them will be hunting for their words which you have given, and they'll be certainly talking it out with their parents about what they heard today. You have brought a change, not what we are usually used to in our reading sessions or in our lectures we have listened so far, because almost all the authors you have introduced are very new to our children. The countries you took us to, Madagascar and Alaska, certainly new to them too. And it shows the importance role played by the writers of today, because it is not the power behind the writer, the power behind the words, where you have to be responsible for our ecosystem, for our environment, not just to entertain and amuse us, right? So the greater responsibility of the writers of today. I'm sure these youngsters will have a lot more to do, and you have pointed us in the right direction. So you have certainly given us a lot to think about. So like Robert Louis Stevenson, I think we should start carrying 2 books in our pocket, one to read and one to write in. So as you see, you have to jot it down so that it does not escape your attention, so that it can be brought to the notice of the next generation, right? Thank you, ma'am, for that enlightening session.
That is a brilliant observation that you made, ma'am. Yeah, about the R.L. Stevenson, the 2 books that Stevenson advised everyone. Okay, brilliant. I think it goes so well with the whatever I was trying to convey.
Yeah. Right. I don't know if they have got anything to ask you, because these books were new to them. Idea is new.
I hope they would have been able to respond to it.
It would have registered somewhere, but it would take some time to settle in, to think it out. This is for the future, not for the present.
Yeah, exactly.
But we need to begin early, right? We need to.
Yeah. You pointed it. I pointed the direction, right? So for them to go on for the journey.
Yeah, definitely. Bhadra is having some questions.
But, raised hands.
Bhadra, you would like to ask something or contribute something?
I think she just raised her hand, but I don't know if you have any questions.
Do you want
Anybody?
to ask something, Bhadra?
Anybody?
No, ma'am, just I accidentally on the button.
Toggled it, yeah. Gauri Tirtha? I see you.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Please, anything you would like to add?
Ma'am, I don't really have a question, but actually being in 12th and having all the pressure of the boards and sitting inside the home, this is really a very refreshing session for me personally. Actually, after 10th last year was the time I actually got a bit of free time to, you know, explore books and other stuff in my life. And the books which ma'am suggested today, it actually, as a humanities student, it's actually really intriguing for me personally. So I would definitely read the books ma'am suggested. And like ma'am said, something which I found really interesting was, you know, to carry 2 books around, one to read and one to write. That is really that's something really new and, you know, something which I've never heard before. So that was really, really a fresh thing to hear, you know, compared to all the different sessions we usually get. So yeah, thank you so much, ma'am, for taking your time and spending it with us. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Gaudi. That's really heartening to hear. I hope the others will share your opinions. Yeah, I'm really touched by your words. And you could begin with Ursula Le Guin. You need not, you know, go straight away to writers like Donna Haraway or Bill Ashcroft. You know, I just use those writers, you know, because when I was trying to put my thoughts together as to what I should convey to the students today, I, you know, was immediately reminded of these writers. So this is just to convey that, you know, these are people who have enabled me to think differently. So I'm sure each one of you will discover your own repertoire, your own list of writers who enable you to think differently. So you need not, you know, directly go to the books that I recommended. I just use those you know, to convey the very powerful thoughts that they have given me. Each one of you will similarly have writers who have created that kind of impact on you and made you look at things around you differently. That is the whole point of reading. You get a new perspective. You see a new image emerging. Your limited vision broadens.
Right, not stereotyped characters.
Exactly, yeah.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Anybody else here? I'm looking at the senior students who will be ready to respond.
I really appreciate the way these young students have, you know, sat through this session. Must have been a pretty long one for them, I thought. So, hats off to you, dear students. Do feel free to ask questions.
Yeah. Actually, it's quite refreshing for all of us, only for students.
I know.
We can brush up our reading skills and along with that find out new books. Yeah. Like
and each session, I mean, I often feel that, you know, this is the benefit that the pandemic has brought into our world, that we get to hear voices from different parts of the world who would never have been otherwise. I can't even ever imagine, you know, talking to Rashmi ma'am and Faisal sir and all the others, you know, had it not been for the pandemic. So this, you know, having to listen, any new voice always opens your eyes a little more. That's therefore very important. I think Bodha Harshita wanted to ask something?
No, ma'am.
Yes, Harshita?
Madam.
No, ma'am.
Siddesh, yes, Siddesh, one question,
Yes,
please.
Madam, and so you mentioned that this Donna Haraway or the new writer which you just now introduced to us, she says that the world that we should that the world which we world towards which we should strive towards for the creation or for the making of such a kind of world. She says that we should place the scientific knowledge as well as the world of scientific fiction, scientific importance, scientific kind of mindset, that kind of knowledge should be placed first and foremost in that kind of world. So does that mean that religion should completely be segregated from that kind of lifestyle in that world?
No, I mean, she does not in any way bring in religion there, because religion is also part of her thinking. No, religion has come from man's thoughts. It's not as if it came with nature. So religion also has its place among the world of imagination, the world of thoughts. So all the knowledge that we have, all the knowledge that we have gained from our books, let us not, you know, keep that alone as sacrosanct. Let us combine it with all our beliefs, all our stories, all our imagination, and we will be able to create new perspectives, a new future. So at no point does she say we don't need religion. No, she does not bring in that word at all. But let us think of religion as also as part of our cultural practice. It's a heritage. Yeah, it's a cultural tradition, isn't it?
Oh yes. Madam, should according to you, which would be the best means to delve into the world of literature, with what kind of genre or with what kind of categories? If history and the historical knowledge of our country, that all history that all interests us, then would it be advisable to further our studies in that direction?
Definitely, definitely. If it is history that enthuses you, you should definitely take it up also, Siddhesh. And each person will have his or her own comfort field. Some may like novels. There might be someone else who might prefer certain kinds of novels, maybe science fiction. Someone else may prefer detective fiction. Someone else may prefer poetry. Someone else may prefer historical writings. And therefore, you cannot really recommend that this is what you should begin reading with and so on. Give yourself that freedom to explore and to reach your own comfort spot. That's what I would recommend. So if something enthuses you, go ahead, Siddhesh. Do not hesitate.
Oh, okay, madam. Madam, and also,
Siddhesh,
yes,
I think
madam,
last one. Okay, last question.
madam, and
Yeah, you can ask.
And madam, is this necessary, or is it true that one should always pursue our reading skills and our reading habits, as well as the books that we read should be confined to English alone, or is it other languages that form a part of our tradition, madam? So what role does our national heritage and all indirectly play some role in our reading habits? Will that will it be somewhat related to this?
Yeah, a good question, Siddhesh. I'm so happy. I mean, I find in you a person who thinks a great deal. Wonderful. Keep that up. See, language should never be a barrier, and you cannot say that the whole idea of considering the literature of one language, English literature, as the best. That would be a one-sided thinking. It is against that. We need to give equal importance and respect to languages and literatures in every part of the world, in whatever form. Some may be in oral form, some may be in written form, some may be in the form of performances, but each has its own validity. But very often we cannot relate to those unless you have a common language. Isn't that so? That is where a language like English plays a role. That does not in any way mean that English literature is the best or the English language is the best. Not at all. It's a via media. It is a kind of tool that we use in order to get in touch with other cultures, other traditions, signifying all along that each one of those is important. Let us not prioritize only one. Let us not give unequal importance or significance to any one system or any one language or any one regime or any one kind of thinking. That multiplicity is very important.
Thank you, ma'am. Ma'am, will you please tell us some of the activities you are involved in? I'm sure children would like to know, since social responsibility is also a very important part of it.
Yeah. We have, activities that get the students to question, for example, a debate, for example. When you engage in a debate, it's one activity that I always make sure to arrange for the students. You begin to look at an issue from so many different aspects, and that is when you become a more involved kind of person. You become a more informed kind of person. It's very important to keep opening as many windows as possible, to not to remain restricted to one kind of activity. And therefore, the literary discussions that I organize, the quiz competitions or the workshops. I organize a lot of workshops in communication skills, because communication is something, which can really bring home this message of an egalitarian world. Communication always is effective when both sides or all sides are equally involved. When one side gets over importance, then communication breaks down there. So different kinds of workshops on communication. I remember a workshop that I recently did for the first year MBBS students of a medical college here. They had an orientation program. So I gave them a session on communicative medicine. You know, on the one hand, they're all students who are entering the big, difficult world of MBBS studies or medical studies, and there's so much that they have to learn, and how they can learn those subjects better when they look at it from the perspective of language, on the one hand, and secondly, how through the communication that they can effect through the field of medicine, through their profession, they can make the world a more equal place. You know, there are so many instances that we know of medical practice dividing society, medical practice denying people their equal rights. We have instances all around us. So medicine is one profession, you know, which can actually make the world a more equal place. So in that way, I mean, I just quoted that example to give you a recent workshop that I did. Each profession, each career, each activity that you do, I think can be reoriented to make life better for not just for us, but for everyone else.
Yeah. On that note, may I conclude the meeting, because we are past 1 hour.
Yeah.
May I call upon our Vice Principal, Sri Abraham Matthew, to propose a vote of thanks.
Thank you, Madam. Audible, Madam?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Most respected today's Chief Guest, Madam Bindu Amat, Associate Professor and Reader and Writer, Principals Sri S. Ajayuma Sir, Librarians Sri Faisal Sir and Vidya Madam, Coordinating Sri Rashmi Madam and other staff members and my dear students. A very good evening to all of you. The most powerful person in the world is the person having maximum knowledge, highest knowledge. You know that the knowledge is powerful. And to get this knowledge, the main source is reading. And during this pandemic, COVID-19 pandemic, this is the best time that students can inculcate that habit of reading to achieve good knowledge, so that that knowledge you can use for changing our society. During this COVID-19 pandemic, our library department has organized last year many useful programs. This year also we have started with a different program. As part of this, we have organized a talk on books and reading by Bindu Madam. Really, in last 50 minutes, Madam has explained about many books, authors, characters, incidents, a huge quantity of materials, information Madam has given. Actually, what we have to do, the students have to collect these books, these information, and you have to go in that way. Madam have given the first step. You have to go through this one, so that we can imagine a new world through literature. You know that our former president asked the students to dream it. Today, Madam has taught us how to imagine a new world through literature and reading. Surely, through reading many books, we can imagine a different world, a different new world through reading. And I am sure that our students will do that one. Madam, really your talk was very informative, very motivated, very much inspiring to our students. And on behalf of KVPattom family, we express our sincere thanks to you for coming, for accepting our invitation, and for spending with almost more than 1 hour with our students and our teachers and our KVPattom family, and giving a wonderful, informative, inspirational speech. Thank you, madam. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. The honor is entirely mine. I thank you for your kind words and thank you to everyone for your patience, for inviting me, and let us all part with the hope that we will meet again.
Thank you, madam, especially that the good words that you have told about KVPattom. We are very much thankful to you. Similarly, I extend my sincere thanks to Principal Sri Jivama sir for guiding our teachers and our team for conducting this wonderful programs. Also, I extend our sincere thanks to librarian Sri Faisal sir and Madam Vidya madam, the librarian too, for organizing such a very useful programs for our students. So thank you, sir, and thank you, madam. Also, I extend thanks to Rashmi madam who was the for this program, and madam is one of the best CCA coordinator and coordinator of different programs. Thank you, madam. Also, express thanks to all the staff members who attended this program, and also the most important persons in today's meeting, today's function, our students. I express thanks to all the students who attended this meeting. And let us conclude with a very important thought given by madam. Let us write new stories of inclusion and avoid exclusion. I hope this today's class will help you to read and write new stories of inclusion and to exclude to avoid exclusion. Once again, thank you one and all.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, ma'am.